I have enough shoe lasts from different periods that I can sort of put together a 200-year history of the development of the shoe last. We have a straight last, perhaps as old as 1780. I have a left and right, middle of the 19th century, could be as early as the Civil War. I kind of think it's a little bit later, maybe 1870. This is from 1890, 1920, somewhere in there. And this guy could be as early as the 1930s, but I suspect it's 1960s, 1950s, maybe even into the 70s. When we look at the progression, obviously we have straight to lefts and rights, but we also have these early shoe lasts are rounded on the bottom, like your foot is. And with the advent of the lasting machine and the idea that we can really crank shoes out, they started to become flat on the bottom to facilitate production, to get these steel plates to really crank them out, hinges to get them out easier. So the internet says that the first left and right shoes were invented in like 1817. There's also another source that says 1845. There is also a source that says the Romans had left and rights. I expect that the idea of left and right shoes was pretty well known throughout antiquity. It's just easier to carve out a single piece of wood and then make two shoes on it than it would be to carve out two mirrored pieces of wood. Although it's totally possible, I've done it, lots of people do it today, but simple expedience and the fact that your customer didn't really mind that they came straight lasted. I expect that the idea of left and right shoes is very old, and the guy in 1817 who invented them simply took an idea that everybody already understood and made it a practical reality by using some machinery that came about in the Industrial Revolution. There is a myth about straight-lasted shoes that you had to change your shoes from left to right and right to left daily to even out the wear. I can tell you from personal experience that that is not true. You put your straight-lasted shoes on, and within about an hour, they are lefts and rights. And within a week, they're even worn in so that you can easily tell which is left and which is right. The idea that you would swap it to the other foot, it just doesn't work. You don't want that left foot on your right foot. So if you look close, you can see a maker's name. It says James. So this last was factory made. A shoemaker bought them and bought a set, and that's what he made his shoes on. This last was used to make peg shoes. It's pretty obvious. This line of holes poked here in the edge is very characteristic of what a last looks like when you've made several peg shoes on it. This guy is left and right. When I look at it, the instep is a little offset. I've seen lasts where the instep was perfectly in the center, and I kind of feel like those are a little earlier. That's why I think this one is a little after the Civil War. It also has a maker's mark on it. I can't read it. This one was also used to make peg shoes. Not as many, maybe only a single pair. And you can see that the pegging all just kisses the shoe last. It's harder to see on this side. There's some in the toe. That tells me the guy that made shoes on this last had his pegging all depth set just so. He did not want to be pegging his shoe to the last, which makes it really difficult to get them out. You can see that nice contour. Matches the bottom, the contour on your heel and your arch. Nice arch support in this. They just don't make them like this anymore. To me, this is the epitome of shoe last design, with this contoured footbed built right into the shoe instead of these flat lasts designed to facilitate speed of construction. where you end up carrying your weight on the point of your ball and the point of your heel. Although we do have these modern gushy inserts to take us back to what it could have been. I like this so much that I had it reproduced. It has a little hole drilled in the back. That is where the last company stuck it on a pin and did a little scanny thing. And I now have these Civil War period shoe lasts made in modern plastic. This last just has an older look and feel to it, which is why I think it's as early as the 1890s, no later than the 1920s. This last doesn't have a maker's name on it, but it is last design number 45. Very thin toe. There's no hole to pull it out of a high boot, so this is probably just for making dress shoes. There's this long steel plate so you can nail right up into the arch. And this would have been made with a 270-degree welt. And there's these little resin pockets for your nails to go in, so you could tack your inner sole in the back here, here, and here, and they're easy to pull out and replace. There's not a lot of other tacking action on this last. Either there weren't very many shoes made on it, or it was easy to repair, so it really looks new. Our final example is a fully modern shoe last. They're usually made out of plastic these days. We have our flat bottom, we have our heel plate, we have our hinge in the middle. This is could be as early as 1950s or 40s. Kind of has a military look to it. But it could be as new as 1970s. This last was made by the Lynn Last Company. Lynn is a town in Massachusetts that is famous for its shoemaking industry, which closed down in the 1970s when we sent all our shoes overseas to be made by de facto slave labor. This is shoe design number 186. Interesting, this has a lot of tack holes in it, and they're all over the place. Where this one, super organized, predictable where those tacks are going to go. This one, they're all in the same place. Every time this man made a shoe on this last, he told the exact same story. So here we have a 200-year history of shoe last design, told in 4 parts. You can see how we started in the beginning with this straight piece of wood right down the center, and as time moves on, we shift weirdly into these contoured forms that don't really have anything to do with the shape of the top of your foot, while we remove the part that does have some relevance to the shape of our foot to facilitate production. A story told, obviously, with a prejudice to the past.